Hello. Oh, that was nice. See?
Yeah, smooth transition.
I like it. I like it a lot. Hey, welcome everybody back to the Living Well show with Dr. Perrin. How are you, Dr. Perrin?
I'm doing terrific. Apologies, my dog seemed to have brought a squeaky toy into the office despite knowing the rule against that. So hopefully that won't be a problem today.
Teddy.
For those of you joining us, this is Pablo Madrigal, my trusted assistant and producer. Without him, we would not have a show. How are you doing, Pablo?
I am doing terrific. Thank you so much. Welcome everybody to the Living Well show with Dr. Perrin. Dr. Perrin, on the other side of the screen here, is a psychologist practicing from the state of Ohio. In this program, we like to discuss how to live a meaningful and fulfilling life. We broadcast live every Monday at the roughly around the same time on X and on YouTube. So definitely join us on those platforms. Throw us your comments in the notes. In chat, we like to read them and bring them up in the conversation as we go along. This show is made with the participation of the audience, and this show is also brought to you by the Hopewell Institute. The Hopewell Institute is an educational media company dedicated to advancing mental health, personal development, and lifelong learning. The Hopewell Institute help fund educational content like this and others. You can visit the newsletter and the website at www.thehopewellinstitute.com. And welcome to the show, everybody.
Yeah, well, today what we have kind of slated to talk about is kind of what to expect from an actual therapy journey. And the reason I want to talk about this today is I read a terrific piece by a senior colleague of mine, Dr. Jonathan Shedler. He is a psychodynamic psychologist. He is probably one of the people one of the living psychologists who I really look to for expert knowledge on psychodynamic science, the independent and interdependent variables of psychology and how they interact with each other at different levels of awareness. And he recently put out on Substack his what to expect of psychotherapy. And I was hoping to read it tonight, and I was going to I was hoping we can rip into it, digest it. Not much to critique because I think it's great, but maybe talk about it a little bit longer. I think I'm just going to jump into it since I have this extreme close-up, and I think what better time to read.
Take it away.
Yeah, sure. So, So I'm just going to read this. This is by Jonathan Shedler. He says, psychotherapy works best when patients understand what they're supposed to do, how to use therapy effectively. It's not intuitive, and there's nothing to compare it to. Too often, in the rush to get started, explanations about what to do and expect are skipped, and that's not the best way to begin. So I'm saying this as Dr. Shedler here. When I taught psychotherapy to psychology and psychiatry trainees, I created a patient handout to explain what to expect in psychotherapy. It was the handout my trainees kept, shared with patients, and posted on their websites, and now I'm sharing it with you. Now, as this goes forward, it hits kind of a Q&A format. And these are questions that I myself see in the therapy, here in the therapy room. One of the most topical questions is, will my therapist give me advice? Dr. Shedler says, people often assume a therapist's job is to give advice, but advice isn't psychotherapy. In the long run, it's rarely helpful. If advice were enough, you wouldn't be coming to therapy. You can get advice anywhere, from friends, from family, or the internet. And instead of advice, your therapist will help you see yourself and your situation more clearly so you can make choices that are right for you. I really like this distinction. Very often people do come to therapy and they say, what should I do, doc? And it's not so simple. I don't know what you should do. I can't scry into a crystal ball any more than you can. I think that this is a very important distinction. What do I do in my therapy sessions? Talk as open as you can, whatever is on your mind, without editing or censoring yourself. It sounds easy, but it's incredibly difficult. Some thoughts will seem unimportant, others will feel unpleasant, embarrassing, or inappropriate, including thoughts about your therapist. Say them anyway. If you noticed something is getting in the way of speaking openly, bring it up. Talk about what's making it difficult. I'm going to jump on to this point because this is what I think separates a psychotherapy relationship from other relationships. If you have a problem with us, we want to hear it. Okay, great. We're imperfect. We're imperfect. I wonder if what's going on in the therapy room is going on in other areas of your life. Other relationships probably aren't going to explore that with you. They might get sensitive, defensive. It's our job. You're paying us to explore that. Here's the $1,000,000 question. I like this one. How will talking help me? It can be hard to see how just talking will help, but talking is the heart of psychotherapy. As you talk, you come to know yourself better. You start to recognize patterns. New options and possibilities emerge. Research shows that most people benefit from therapy, even those with the most serious problems. The benefits are not immediate. At first, there may be no obvious connection between what you're talking about and how your problems will improve. It's like planting a tree. There's no immediate connection between planting seeds and eating apples. But if you plant seeds and tend to them, apples will come. If you start therapy intending to try it out for a season or two, or sorry, that's the video gamer in me. If you start therapy intending to try it for a session or two just to see what happens, you'll likely be disappointed. That's like planting seeds. The decision is pointless because there are no apples in the next morning. Therapy takes time. Give it a chance to work. Oh, great metaphor. Is therapy like talking to a friend? It's very different. I agree with this. With friends, you pick and choose what you talk about. In therapy, you try to say whatever comes to mind without knowing in advance where your thoughts may lead. Friends take turns sharing information. In therapy, you will do most of the talking. Your therapist will learn a great deal about you, but you'll know much less about them. Another difference is that your therapist cannot socialize or meet with you outside therapy appointments. They can't meet you for coffee or accept social invitations. This has nothing to do with whether or not they'd enjoy seeing you. It's because a therapist can't have a social relationship with you and be an effective therapist. This is really important, what we call a dual relationship. A lot of times we would click, and under other conditions, maybe we could be friends, but it just doesn't work like that. If we develop a friendship, if we go out to dinner, if in some really weird cases develop romantic relationships, that can undermine the work. It undermines the process of psychotherapy. Now, here's the fun one. What if I'm unhappy with my therapist? When you start therapy, you should feel you can talk to your therapist and that they are interested in you and able to understand you. If you don't connect in the beginning, it's wiser to choose someone else. As therapy continues, there will be times when you feel upset, disappointed, or angry. This is normal. When it happens, it is important to talk about what is bothering you. This is not the time to skip sessions or quit. It is time to talk about it. If you've been working comfortably together and suddenly you find yourself feeling angry or wanting to quit, it may mean therapy has touched on something difficult and important. Lost my place for a moment. What if I say, why stay if I'm angry? At different times, you may have feelings towards your therapist similar to feelings you've had in other important relationships. This includes hurt, disappointment, fear, or anger. Talking about these feelings is crucial. When you discuss your feelings towards your therapist, you'll also be learning about yourself and your relationship patterns. This makes it possible to recognize and rework self-defeating patterns so you don't have to keep repeating them. I have one more, and then I think I'm going to check in with you guys and talk about this a little bit more, because this is what I think is important: the unconscious. You may have heard that psychotherapists are interested in the unconscious. There's nothing mysterious about this. It simply means that we don't always know why we feel or act the way we do. Psychotherapy helps us understand this. For example, you may have found yourself feeling unreasonably angry with someone out of proportion to the situation. This can happen when the person reminds you of someone else and you didn't realize it. In this example, understanding unconscious thoughts and feelings could be as simple as remembering why you're angry and recognizing that two people are different. Why does this matter? Because if you take your anger out on the wrong person, you can damage important relationships. If, for example, the relationship is with your life partner or boss, you may be in for a rough time. So, Pablo, I'm going to address you. I've been talking for like 15 minutes now. How's this sitting with you?
I mean, I love it. I'm listening. Very interesting. Does it continue?
I have about 2 or 3 more sections. Others may want you to quit. As therapy continues, people close to you may urge you to stop. This often means that you're changing, and the changes are confusing and troubling to them. They're used to the old you and your familiar patterns. Sometimes they'll think you're getting worse just when you're starting to get better. Be prepared for this. You may be tempted to skip sessions. There will likely be times you struggle to keep appointments. You may have work demands, family responsibilities, or other obligations. They'll seem unrelated to therapy, but they often come up just when therapy touches on something difficult. This is when you'll do some of your most important work. Don't judge beforehand how important a session will be. Resolve to keep every appointment no matter what. I might be a little biased, but yeah, it is better that you keep those appointments. Ending is a part of therapy. I'm going to say this again. Ending is a part of therapy. At some point, you will start to think about ending therapy, ideally because you've accomplished what you've come for and life is on a better course. But don't rush. Ending is an important phase of therapy, and you need time to talk about it. Let your therapist know well in advance that you're thinking about ending. When the time comes, agree on a date for your last session, and then plan to do meaningful work in the time leading up to it. Expect things to come up that haven't come up before, and then some. Plan to use the time to consolidate your gains. Take stock of what you've accomplished and what's unfinished, and consider together what lies ahead. Consider together what lies ahead. Don't miss out by ending abruptly. Ask questions. Blah, 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 blah. The rest is mostly a call to other therapists. And I also want to say Dr. Shedler acknowledges Luborsky L. 1984 Principles of Psychoanalytic Psychotherapy Basic Books as inspiration for this post. I wanted to share that because that is better than most guides that I've seen on what to expect for psychotherapy. Even in my own clinical intake documents, I send what to expect and how to prepare for the next session. I have updated my materials. I have included this. I have folded it in. It is one of the best descriptions that I've ever said or I've ever seen. So yeah, I'm hoping we can chat about this a little bit more.
Yeah, totally. So basically, what to expect from therapy, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the theme that we landed on from that Substack.
Yes.
And five distinct sections, if you will, kind of like the setting the stage type thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the beginning. Then there was talk about advice, the advice versus the work that you have to do on your own, right?
Yeah, what the actual work of psychotherapy is, even the role of the therapist themselves. Yeah. We are not all-knowing advice givers.
Yeah, the importance of talking, actually talking. We've actually mentioned this in a previous episode, but you know, the patient or the client comes in and sits in for therapy and just silence, right? And then you're there and you're like, at your time, but you have to talk, right? I mean, therapy happens when
I
you
don't
talk.
know. Back when I worked with teenagers, sometimes I would get some really good documentation work done as they were playing chicken with who'd speak first.
And then of course there's gonna be some difficult moments along the way. No, we've talked about on the in our previous episode when we talked about how high agency clients, how there can be some um, power structures and power dynamics and kind of clashing of minds, disagreements, et cetera, et cetera. Um, and then also the importance of commitment and understanding that therapy might have an end, right?
Mm-hmm. I actually really like the juxtaposition that therapy is a commitment, and part of that commitment is committing to finishing it, to ending it. I posted something on X earlier about uh, gosh, sometimes I'm trying to remember how I phrased it. And this is it doesn't matter if you save a patient's marriage or you help them make, $500,000. They might tell you, wow, you're the best, you're the greatest. I want you to be my therapist forever. I'm going to work with you until you retire. And thank you. I appreciate that. And part of this commitment is a completion. Like we have like when do you feel like we have completed the contract of the purpose of our work together? I didn't mean to cut you off. I just really wanted to highlight that point.
No, no, no. I was done. Um, cool. So, um, at the beginning of the excerpt or the post, um, the doctor talks about skipping the kind of like the beginning, the first part of the therapy, right?
Mhm.
What is this? What is this part that some therapists often skip?
Well, it's about setting and managing the expectations, because we do it all the time, right? We see 5, 6, 7, hopefully not more than 8 patients a day, and some of them graduate and we get new patients, we have intakes, we bring new people in. So this is the most familiar process to us. This is very normal for us. We need to remember that the person walking into the room, the people coming to our consultation room, we don't know what they've been exposed to, we don't know what they're aware of. Maybe they've seen movies, maybe they've read books, some depiction of the therapeutic relationship, but we honestly have no idea what they're expecting. In fact, one of the most popular questions I like to ask a patient that I'm maybe consulting with or meeting for the first time is, have you ever had therapy before? And if they say yes, okay, great, tell me about it. What was that like for you? I'll ask them what worked for them, what they wish could have gone differently. And sometimes they'll tell me, oh gosh, no, they were the homework therapist. They were just every time I'd come in, they would challenge everything that I said, or they'd make me write out a ABC worksheet. And I'm like, come on, man, I'm in pain. Stop making me do homework. I didn't like homework in high school. Why am I doing homework in therapy? And I'll be able to say, great, okay, we're not going to be doing homework in our work together. But it is also important for you to say, this is my approach, this is how I do psychotherapy. Because a lot of times we all have we do have different approaches. Sometimes who we are is the mechanism of change. But if somebody was coming in expecting to do 12 weeks of a manualized therapy, like dialectical behavior therapy, and they come to me, who's a little bit more open-ended and developmental, they might be a little bit upset. It's like, where's the concrete strategies? If they wanted something that is more open-ended and developmental, and they met a brief psychotherapist who only works with someone for 1 to 3 weeks, and it's just, here, buy my self-help book and execute the steps, they're going to be disappointed. It's really important to set and manage the expectations of the developmental arc of therapy, both what therapy is, but also your individual approach. Yeah.
Why do therapists tend to skip this part? Is it an oversight? Is it maybe taken for not granted, but almost like, oh, if you're here, you already know what you're in for, kind of thing?
Mm-hmm. I think it's half that, but I think the other half is therapists really want to make sure that people understand their technique, and that's actually not what the purpose of this is. Patients don't give a crap what your technique is. If they come in and you say, oh, what we do is we spend the first 5 minutes of this therapy doing a check-in, and then the next stage is that we use this empirically validated structure where the patient's fallen asleep. They don't care. They don't care about your method. They want to understand what am I going to expect? Do I have to show up on time? Like, well, what happens if I miss appointments? Like, am I allowed to tell you that you're wrong? Very often this comes up organically within the first few meetings. Someone might go, gee, I don't want to disappoint you, doc, but I don't think you're right. I actually think you're kind of barking up the wrong tree there. Good. Tell me, this is the scientific method. I was testing a hypothesis. If it doesn't seem right to you, tell me I'm wrong. We're going to update the hypothesis. We're going to make it more accurate. We're going to triangulate it a little bit closer to the truth. I love it when a patient tells me wrong. Very rarely do I go, I'm going to hold this. I'm going to put it in my pocket and I might come back to it later because I think there might be something there, but maybe I just don't see it very clearly yet. These are the things that I think is really important to discuss with somebody ahead of time. Some don't even know how long therapy is going to last.
Yeah.
It's important to also get their idea. What is the trajectory of time that you see yourself putting into this?
Is there a noticeable difference between patients who understand the therapy and those who don't? What have you noticed in that regard?
I want to think about that one for a second. I do think it is an advantage when you work with somebody and you're not their first therapist. I'm usually someone's third. By the time they've reached me, they have had some uncomfortable experiences, or through their first couple experiences, they got a little bit closer to what they were looking for. And I'm very clearly articulating that my process is that. Very often when somebody doesn't come to therapy, they're also fairly open-minded. Like I said, most people have been exposed to this process through television or movies, even though it is Hollywooded up very much. So they're kind of saying, hey, I'm game. I'm open. I don't know what this is going to look like. Let's figure it out. Both cases, I think it's important to highlight, even though this is what your expectation is of therapy, this is my approach, or this is kind of what I invite you to do. Please push back and tell me when I'm wrong. That's part of the process. Okay, nobody's told me that before. I think it's really important to have this kind of unfold. Sometimes it's organic, but ideally some of the groundwork is set at the intake, at the initial meeting.
So where does the responsibility lie here? Is it on the patients to ask or the therapist?
Nope, I think it's the therapist to withhold assumptions. They should be polite, and they should say, maybe you do know all of this already, but let me share with you what I think is really important about this. Sometimes I have to tell people that psychotherapy operates from a 45 to a 50-minute hour, and they'll go, huh? Yeah, that's so that we can go to the bathroom in between patients, get a glass of water or drink our coffee. I love scrolling social media. It's really funny that last 10 minutes between like 50 minutes in the hour, every therapist in the country is posting on social media. They're trying to get their last scramble tweet out before they go into their next session. And so everyone's alive. So it's a great water cooler moment. But no, some people realize, I just thought we would push it towards the end of the hour. No, therapy is not it's a therapy hour. The therapy hour is not quite 60 minutes.
Right, right. Yeah. When you watch a TV show, you don't watch the whole TV show. There's ads in there. As you pay the premium.
Oh God, it's been so long since I've ever had cable, but yeah, the episodes ended 26 minutes after the between 26 minutes and a half hour. So yeah, and that's how it works. I'm gonna put that
Yeah.
in my pocket. I feel like I can turn a metaphor into that. I suddenly feel old though because I only use streaming services. It has been so long since I've ever seen a commercial.
I know, right? Isn't that weird?
Uh,
Every now and then somebody whips up their wants to show me on something on YouTube and it has commercials, and I'm like, ugh.
Oh,
Where's
I'll
that come
visit my
from?
family. My brother and my mom are really big football people, so I'll go and we'll have this big family event for like OSU or Bengals games because we're a Cincinnati family, and or we're born and grew up in Cincinnati. And it's so funny because I'll be twiddling my thumbs, not paying attention to football, but when the commercials come on, like my eyes light up and I lock onto it because it's like it's new to me. I haven't seen this before. It's been like how are people advertising these days?
Funny.
That's neither here nor there.
Yeah, exactly. Um, the next topic, or the next kind of section that we identified from this, was the part of advice versus self-discovery, and you know how much that goes in a balance.
Mm-hmm. Well, it shouldn't be very balanced. It should be unbalanced towards the self discovery. But there is something that I'm wrestling with on this advice component because some people do explicitly come and want to consult with a psychotherapist. Like, I want to know about like what is this now. Poorly trained therapists, they might just say, oh, do this, oh, try this, use I statements, go out there and do that, right? uh, I think one of the most important things is to really set the groundwork for the developmental process of being a little bit more spontaneous and creative in your own problem solving skills. You first have to create the metaphorical drawing board before even approaching anything that even looks like a recommendation. Because what if we tell you, oh, what should I do, doc? Should I take the job? Yes, you should take the job. Well, what if you take it and you hate it? We can't scry into a crystal ball. We don't know the future any better than you do. What if I say don't take the job and then you regret it and you see someone else get it and they go off, and then I don't want to be on the hook for that either. I think the first thing is to set a drawing board and say we don't know what is going to work, even if this is the direction we're going to take, like behaviorally. Like, let's start trying new things that we haven't done before, and let's put them on paper. Let's try this, and then let's try that, and let's try this. It's not advice. These are testing potential approaches to put ourselves into better positions to get the life that we want, and to come back to the drawing board and assess, is this working? That is the closest to advice I think a therapist should be getting. Otherwise, it gets dangerous. Otherwise, we are arresting the self discovery. We are the expert. We know better than you. It's this narcissistic idea that we can just wave a magic wand and make our patients get better. No, we have been real therapists, the one who I admire. They've been through this long enough that they know better. They know that they can't just tell somebody what to do and things get better.
Would you even say? Would you go as far as saying that advice can actually get in the way of therapy?
Yes. Oh gosh. That if you want advice, get a life coach. That's my philosophy. You can get some 18 or 19-year-old who will just be like, "Oh, bro, just do this." They don't care. They don't care if they're right or wrong. They just care if you get paid. I care about processes. I care about. I wonder what is getting in the way of you doing that. Alcoholism's the greatest example. Oh, I know. I now know why I'm an alcoholic. It's because my dad's drinking. Well, just because you know doesn't mean that you have to change, or just because you know it doesn't mean that that is the mechanism of change. There's a lot of work that goes in between that awareness and the actual change of behavior. But if you meet kind of a poorly trained therapist or a coach, sometimes physicians in primary care this is their only point of contact with you, are going to give you, hey, quit drinking. Stop doing that. Well, I smoke about a pack a day. Well, you should quit cigarettes. Oh, I eat a lot of candy. Well, you're pre-diabetic. Stop it.
Stop it.
Yeah, and then they
Quit it.
go out and then they go home. Like there's no accountability. There's no recognition that there are things that get in the way. It's just clear advice. Yeah, that's Googleable. Almost anyone and their neighbor could give you that kind of advice. That actually is not the process of change, and that's what people come to psychotherapy for. They want to undergo a process of change, not insight, not information. Read a self-help book for that.
How common is it for people come into your consultation room asking, just wanting the answers, asking you for the answers? And what do you say to them? Pretty common?
Yes, I think especially at the beginning, as we're setting and managing the expectations of what to expect in psychotherapy. Now, I see this most in relational psychotherapy. If people are coming in for couples counseling or marital therapy, they will look me in the eye and they say, "What do I do?" And I have to tell them, I don't know yet. I'm just meeting you guys for the first time. We can create the proverbial drawing board, right? We have research. We know what works. There is this terrific institute called the Gottman Institute, which is just, they have an abundance of resources for healthy relationships, for improving communication, for even redeveloping sexual intimacy. It's just an amazing resource. And we can show them the data and we can show them the research and we can say, based off of this, you can try this. But we don't know what's going to work. At the very least, let's come up with a commitment to keep trying things and keep being willing to try new things, new and creative solutions to old problems, or new and adequate solutions to old ones. And then we can throw stuff at the drawing board and keep coming back to it and see what sticks.
Are there any exceptions where you think that advice is the correct course of action, or is it always just a preferred no?
Actually, that's a good question, and it's very pertinent to another really popular conversation going on in the mental health sphere right now, which is autism. You've probably even been exposed to further conversations of autism. Our Secretary of Health is quite championing a potential treatment for at least what he presumes to be one form of autism.
Don't take the Tylenol.
There is real autism. There is an actual. Yeah, don't do it.
Don't take
it. I am in a trivia group with some really Aspergery gentlemen, 2 college professors, a dentist, and an attorney, and we almost wanted to call our trivia team
like
the
Tylenol
Americans. But we figured people wouldn't know us well enough to appreciate our own neurodiverse take on this.
That sounds like the start of a joke, by the way.
But back to your question, though, I work with people who have real, like actual autism. Like there is an impairment. There is a very clear line of impairment that they are unable to empathize in a particular way. It's a theory of mind thing. It is very difficult to see the world through somebody else's eyes and understand what's going on between their ears. It's a level of abstraction that the cognitive structure of the autistic brain just really struggles to connect with. And that puts a very serious limit on the insight-oriented approaches to psychotherapy, like what we call Rogerian person-centered approaches, even to psychoanalysis. I myself, in my early training, when working with someone who is in the higher functioning autism, high IQ, but with the autistic brain, we really did not do good work together. And I really put the fault on myself because I was using a level of abstraction that she just was not capable of doing. I think this is the time where you go directly into behavioral therapy. if I could go back and help this patient the way that I now help people with autism, very often it is very concrete. You stink. People do not respect, like, or want to work in close proximity to people who stink. If you want to be more successful in this office, you have to bathe before you go to work. Now, that is a big no-no in exploratory, open-ended psychoanalytic psychotherapy. But that is explicitly what that person is coming to. Like, why am I not successful in this environment? And you have to be that direct. First you do this, then you do this. Now, is it advice? Really bordering on the line of advice giving, but it sometimes you have to be very concrete in skill development and in education. Like, I'm giving the most concrete example as I can. If you have a problem bathing, you will struggle with some social and professional relationships, period. No, but what if people accept me for who I am? No, people will respond to the smell that reaches their nostrils, and that will get in the way of the connections that you're trying to make. Looking for a job. I mean, you talked with someone with autism, you have to tell them, this is how you set up a job application. This is how you go on a job interview. You smile, you shake a hand, and you say, how do you do? I think this is a very long way of me answering. I think that when you are working with people with autism who have very concrete goals, I think you should be a lot more concrete and direct in your approach.
We just got a lovely note from a friend of the show, Dark Brian fella. He's big shout out.
Hi, Dark Brian.
He always turns in.
Oh yeah, I'm a fan of his. I actually don't have our chat open.
That's okay. Thank you for tuning in, Dark Brian. It's good to see you, man. Yeah, interesting. Okay, so I mean, there's definitely just like everything. There's not a clear cut black or white answer, right? Would you say that just the right
word?
Would you say that just the right amount of advice is necessary sometimes?
Just the right amount, which is minimal.
Which is minimum. But it is just the right amount.
Mm-hmm.
So the next up, the third point that was brought up in the Substack was the importance of talking,
mm-hmm.
and how it's just crucial, right? Because I mean, it makes sense. It sounds almost too obvious, but I think that we live in a world where common sense and obvious things are not necessarily very common.
Therapy starts where common sense ends.
Say more about that. What do you mean by that?
I stole that quote from Otto Kernberg. He was in an interview with a gentleman who I admire, Dr. Pooter, and oh man, that shook me. But yeah, this is the mechanism of change, though, is speaking, and it almost seems obvious, but it's what's not obvious, even though we call it talk therapy, is how or why talk leads to that mechanism of change. And I think it is just that. It is where common sense ends, because you can talk about it. This does not make sense. Well, yeah, it's wild. Let's think about it. And then they talk, and then they talk, and then they talk. We don't always, how do I phrase this? One of the earliest analytical concepts is what we call free association, which is just no structure, no bounds, just start talking, whatever you want. Have you ever been around someone like that? Have you ever been around someone who just...
Oh yeah.
They start
At
revealing
least once a
stuff.
week.
Oh my God, the stuff starts coming out, right? And it's just, early relationships, what they had for lunch, hurts, pains, wishes, desires. All of this is huge content. A therapist is going to be tracking all of this derivative communication, right? I think of that meme of like Charlie Day from Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where he has that map and all the red dots, and he's right. So like we're tracking all of this derivative communication, and we're identifying themes, much like a qualitative researcher might be identifying themes for a research paper or an ethnography. And within these themes, we start recognizing even deeper patterns. And then if those patterns lead to kind of a cohesive relational thing, and we start seeing it showing up in their relationship with us, we can bring them to their attention. I wonder if that's what's coming up with me. I wonder if that has anything to do with the difficulty that we had in our last session. I wonder if that had to do with us missing last week. And very often this can feel like being punched in the face, because we were just talking. We didn't realize that there was a cohesive thread, and suddenly these lines they twist, and they become like you get it. They're like, holy crap, oh my gosh, I think this is a pattern. And before you know it, they're revealing stuff we couldn't have possibly have known. We haven't lived their life. We're not that insightful. Like we can't look in their eyes and be like, oh, they're not telling me about that one event that happened in the 4th grade between them and the mother. We don't know it. But if we say something and it cracks open and that gap opens, it'll go, oh my gosh, this is just like that time in the 4th grade with my mother. And now we're doing therapy. Now we're seeing how the echoes of the past are showing up in our current behavior and our current distress and our current relationships.
So therapy can be, like planting seeds for future breakthroughs. And those seeds can just be planted by just talking.
Mm-hmm. I like the planting seed metaphor for growing fruit, but my favorite metaphor is that of scaffolding. Like how do you build a building? You create a foundation, you build the scaffolding, and there are these zones of proximal development. And as these foundations and these zones of proximal development develop and the shape takes form, eventually you're going to see this firm, steady building. But you don't know what it looks like. Like you watch it as it takes shape, but it becomes a little bit more clear as it shows up. I don't know where I'm going with this, but I like the scaffolding metaphor, because sometimes people can take a step back and they can see, okay, now that I've seen the growth and the building and all of the different stages, I can see it starting to take shape. I might actually believe that this will be a full building one day.
Mm-hmm. Is it, which one do you see the most, or would you say it's more common? Do you see people openly talking, or do you see people being more cautious with what they what Jesus Christ, with what they share?
Now I think I've been having verbal diarrhea this whole hour. Please, you're in great company. Now this is anecdotal, N of one. The biggest difference that I've seen has been in the systems in which I worked. So when I worked for the Archdiocese of Chicago, I had some fairly open-minded people. They were primarily religious people going to a religious therapy center to get therapy. There was trust by virtue of that. When I was in college counseling, I saw a lot more reluctance, because they were afraid, because we worked for the institution itself, we worked for the universities, that what they revealed in therapy might be a matter of record at the university, that it could potentially blow up in their face. And so they were a little bit more censored, a little bit more guarded. And even if they did have limited psychotherapy services, they wouldn't try to use it all, or they would still, dance around it. When I worked in the VA with veterans who have maybe been in and out of the VA system for 50 years, and they've probably been in and out of 6, 7, or 8 VAs, and they've had 12, 13, or 14 different therapists through the VA, when they met me for the first time, I represented everyone they have ever met, everyone they have ever interacted with, and anyone who's ever given them treatment or recommendation. So they came in, and it wasn't so much that they were guarded, and it wasn't so much that they were open. It's they wanted to treat me the way that they have been set, how their expectations have been set and managed to do psychotherapy. And the work is to be like, hey man, if you've seen one therapist at one VA, you've seen one therapist at one VA. Hi, I'm Ed. We're starting at the beginning here.
Yeah,
Uh,
building those foundations. Yeah.
Mhm. But since I started my private practice, I find most people are open. Now, not right away. And why should they? We are strangers.
Sure.
They don't know me. I don't know them. There is potential risk if I were a bad actor. I'm not, but how are you going to know that just by meeting me for the first time?
Yeah.
That has to come out. But they choose me. The difference in private practice is these are people who've sat down, they've done their homework, they have created a short list of therapists. Like they are proactive, and they said, I want to work with you. By the time they're in my consultation room, I don't even have to explain to them what psychotherapy is. They're committed, they're open, and they're ready to dive right in.
That's excellent. And but even though there's already that commitment, and we've kind of, maybe gone through a first set of hurdles that you probably don't have to see because of the other two therapists that went before you, there's still difficult moments in the relationship with your patients.
Mm-hmm.
um I mean, how can those become valuable, or how can you use those to strengthen that relationship?
Uh, I don't just tell them that it might happen. I tell them that if I do my job right, I will trigger you. And I want to be very concrete when I say that. If a therapist does their job right, they will trigger you. Like that is a mechanism of change. If we just get along and we're all, warm and fuzzy and peachy, we're not doing therapy. And in fact, if we are getting along and all is warm and peachy, I have to think about what am I missing here? And often I might see the nerve, and it is my professional responsibility to flick the nerve. And I have to do this compassionately. Like this isn't a callous process. I if I have any patients listening or watching this, one of my most common phrases is, can I throw a grenade? Because I know that it's gonna hit. I know it's going to be big. I know it's going to explode, and I honestly don't know what chunks are going to fly where. And I genuinely am compassionate when I say this. Like it is kind of my responsibility to go somewhere that's going to hurt right now. And if I'm doing this right, it will hurt you. I want you to know that this is therapeutic and good. It can go worse than that. Even in my best intentions, I will make a joke. I might be a little bit too firm. I might be a little too warm. They will leave. Like it will be a rift. They will say, F you. Well, usually it's not that bad, but some degree of let's just stop here. Or they just they just don't show up to the next appointment. I call them and I get an email, and it's not a direct communication. Hey, we're going to stop. Now, the thing about the rift, right, is rifts, if it created a rift in psychotherapy, not that I'm honest, I can be an asshole sometimes. I want to own that I'm responsible for some of these rifts, right? But very often how the patient does the rift is how they've done other rifts. It's how they've walked away from other relationships. It's how they've broken up. It's how they've been abandoned to themselves, and they are repeating them in some meaningful way. So it is my job to look at and assess how this rift might fall into the greater interpretive picture of psychotherapy. And then I put trust into the universe. What do I mean by this? 80 to 90% of the time, in my experience, I am pretty close to 100%. They come back. There is the rift and there is the repair. And I don't mean this is immediate process. There are times where they come back 8 months later. I had a patient come back a year and a half later, and I knew it was going to happen in the rift. And I said, when they come back, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, because based off of this rift and the work we've done together, I think it's X, Y, and Z. A year and a half goes by. They come back. I look at my notes and XYZ, they crack right open. That rift then becomes a repair. And any metaphor, there are tons of metaphors in the world about like scar tissue, right? It's thicker than skin. When there's a rift and a repair, the repair is often stronger than what it was before the rift. So I really try to front load the conversation, and I try to share what I'm talking about right now really early on in the therapy relationship, because I want them to know that that is part of the process of therapy, and that I want to help that repair when it comes forward. That often is some of the most potent work of the therapy relationship, and you cannot plan for it. It is impossible to anticipate when those moments will happen. You just
Well,
have
you
to.
never know what nerve you're going to touch.
Oh yeah.
So, what's the danger if somebody quits therapy as soon as they feel like frustrated or attacked or something like that?
The status quo. Really, that's the risk. At best, you're going to change, and at worst, you're not going to change. If you leave therapy, you're very likely going to be going back into old behaviors. Maybe not necessarily a relapse, but what we would call stereotypical behavior, or stereotypical or pathological spontaneity. We're going what Freud would call repetition compulsion. We're going to go back to how we've always done things. And often it is in that return or going back into that homeostasis that the pain or the discomfort is higher. And that's when they call the therapist, and they're like, yeah, I'm me. Well, maybe you're right, doctor.
But
something like that.
That also has to do with their commitment to therapy and their commitment to change, no?
Mm-hmm. But that, I mean, I don't see it as my job to persuade them or coerce them. My job is to just show them what's possible, and I want them to know, like, I'm not going to chase you. I'm not going to put a gun up to your head if you don't come back to therapy. If you take this into another therapist and you're like, oh, Dr. Perrin was such a jerk, he triggered me, and I just don't want you to do that, and that next therapist helps you, I'm happy that I've done my job. I've at least helped you believe that there is still possibility, even if it's not with me. But again, my rate is actually kind of high. It's about 80 to 90%. My patients, they come back when there's a rift, and I don't think it's because I'm particularly brilliant or charming or technically proficient at my job. I think it is because I've done an adequate job setting that frame of therapy. Like, this is what to expect. This is what to expect from this process, even if it's longitudinal, even if it's over a period of years as opposed to weeks. Like, it probably will happen.
And what is the influence of outside relationships on the person taking therapy, and how their growth and their development from therapy influences how they are outside in their personal relationships, and then as the people usually see pushback from other people in their life.
I'm really glad that you're saying this, because that really stood out to me from Dr. Shedler's conceptualization, because he warned against perhaps the worst case scenario. If you're in really sometimes exploitative, I'm reluctant to say narcissistic, but very often if there are relationships that were benefiting from behavior that was causing you pain, and you are acting more freely, more authentically, and you're having more firm boundaries, you're telling people no, like you're not letting people walk all over you, that those people tend to get upset. they will push back and they will say, I liked it better when you just did whatever I said all the time. And, you cooked and cleaned for me and were essentially my little slave. Yeah, no shit. They would miss that part of you. But I find that extremely rare. I find that is the least common relational outcome. And again, this is N of one. This is just personally anecdotal. In my experience, what I see is people then reach out for their own psychotherapy. I find it as an inspirational process. If you see your spouse or a parent, child, or a really close friend that you at least see close enough to where you have that kind of intimate, observation, and you see them just crushing it, just like killing it at work, being more confident, feeling more alive, like vitality, it shows up in your whole essence and how you live and how you move. They might think, gosh, maybe I should get a therapist. One of the specific things that I see in the closest relationships are the patient, the person has been managing other people's emotional life for them. And as they are taking that step back to manage their own life, they empower those around them to take more accountability and direction, more of that internal locus of control in their own life. And they start going, gee, maybe I should be working on some of those things. So in my experience, the people who are closest to those in therapy end up going through their own parallel journeys of growth, of transformation, and hope, of inspiration.
And as we get closer to the end of the show, I want to talk also about that point of endings, ending therapy, and how does that come into play? And yeah, is there a way to predict or to see the end of therapy approaching, or does it just happen in a session?
This is something that I've been thinking of a lot lately, is how to really make the most of a good ending. And I've tried the rushed endings. I've sometimes have the rushed endings. A patient will say, I'm doing great. I have life by the horns, and it's all thanks to you. You're brilliant. It's never that. I think we should end right here, right now. Goodbye. And sometimes we see it coming. Like, they've been crushing it. Like, life is just going well for them. I prefer to set a date. If you go 6 months out, all right, it's 6 months till Christmas. Let's end at Christmas, right? A lot of stuff happens in that window. Very often you get to be with your patient as they go through some of their experiences of loss, because they are pre-grieving the end of a relationship. Much like the last day of summer camp, people can get very emotional, and they don't do it at the beginning of summer camp. They don't do it in the middle of summer camp. They do it at the end of summer camp. Endings can stir up our feelings of, or our memories of, being abandoned. Not just our fears, but our actual memories of abandonment. And I think a lot of stuff can come up there, and it can be potent. There can be tears, there can be screaming, there can be rifts, there can be repairs. And it sometimes even, what's the word I'm looking for? It can make us want to reevaluate our decision to end. And I think it's important to stick to that quit date as much as possible. Not to be a monster. Like, I'm not never going to treat you again. But part of this is coming up as we are approaching this endpoint. It is part of this process. Like, let's keep the frame of this so that we can continue to explore what comes up as it comes up. Yeah, I think that ending can do a lot of really good therapy.
Is the ending part of that setting of expectation at the start of the of therapy?
Yes. Now this is a bigger part of some models than others. And I say this because the type of therapy that I practice and that I am really putting effort into mastering is ongoing, open ended developmental psychotherapy. We can make an argument that as long as we're breathing, we're developing. Until we are dead, we are still becoming a person, we are becoming ourselves. And having a psychotherapist ever present throughout that perpetual cycle could mean that we are always in the process of growth with this person. Maybe there is an advantage to that. I don't know. I do think ending is a very important part of therapy. Why start something without a very clear idea of what it looks like to end?
Mhm.
I I personally, and I'm going to own this, have not treated anyone for longer than 4 years. I would defer to some of my senior colleagues on what can be done in a longer course of therapy. It's possible that there is more that can be done in a longer course of therapy. All I know is anecdotal or what I've read or what I've researched. From my own personal experience, N of one, by approximately the 3 year mark of an episode of care, that patient just starts talking about the pains of the day. Like, oh, this week this happened to me, but that just reminds me of my childhood, and we already worked through that. Oh, yeah, this week my boss said that, and I responded this way because I know that in the past it would have triggered me, and I'm not triggered that way anymore. I'm sitting in the back going, we've completed our therapy. You if there is anything left, it may be in my blind spot, but you're now being a person living in the world as your life is unfolding. You're now a complete person. But that's my N of one.
Mhm.
My usually around 3 years that happens.
Mhm.
Maybe in episode 1000, 5 years from now, when we're broadcasting this episode and we're revisiting it, I'll be like 7 years. 7 years is the perfect window.
Well, let's hope we get there, buddy. Yeah. Well, fantastic. I mean, it sounds like there was one more point that I made a note here about in regards to commitment and skipping sessions. Um, I don't know if we have to stress the importance of not skipping sessions.
I can
but how can skipping session trump the the or put a dent on the progress?
Oh gosh, I have a metaphor. Oh, one of my favorite mentors, Dr. Eisenberg. Shout out Dr. A. Brilliant man. He had this great analogy. He said, it's interactive, Pablo. So I'm sorry, I'm going to pick on you. How do you make a chocolate chip cookies?
um, you make the dough, right? You
Okay,
gather all your
assemble
ingredients.
ingredients,
You
right?
make gather all your ingredients.
Hmm.
You put everything methodically into a mixing bowl.
Hmm.
Make your dough,
Yeah.
scoop it into even balls,
Shape
put
it a
it
little
in
bit.
your turn on your oven,
Hmm.
preheat it, put it in a sheet tray,
Okay.
grease it up.
What happens if you put it in the oven? Oh, how long? How long for the oven cookies usually? About
uh let's say 20 minutes,
20 minutes.
15 to 20 minutes
What
depending.
what would happen if you took it out after 3 minutes?
Oh, they'd be
What if you put
undercooked.
it back in at 5? What if you took it out again
Oh,
at 7 minutes? What if you put it
well,
back in again at
now
15
now you're
minutes?
just being a goon.
What would happen to the cookies?
I would have to just get totally screwed up.
They'd probably cook funny, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I look at psychotherapy. Realistically, you're not going to come into some Quasimodo like warped psyche, but very often psychotherapy is going to turn into check-ins. Well, what happened in the last 2 weeks? Well, what happened in the last 3 weeks? And by the time psychotherapy starts, the hour's over. That's one of the risks. Now, one of my privileges for as somebody who owns his own psychotherapy practice is that I can set the conditions of my psychotherapy. One of the things that I do is that I charge for my late cancellations and skipped appointments. And that's because it is part of the work, right? Dr. Shedler said in his expectations for psychotherapy that when some difficult processes happen, that's when we feel motivated to be more likely to skip. Even when things are going really well in our life, that can often be what makes us convince ourselves that we're going to skip. So when they do, when they no show or when they call 5 minutes before therapy, hey, can't make it, I accidentally double booked, forgot to tell you, I charge them. Two things are happening. One, I'm sitting down during that hour and I'm doing the work. I wonder if this is related to some of the stuff that we're talking about. So when we meet again next week, I'm going to say I'm wondering if that's related to us really approaching this difficult subject that started coming up lately. And maybe they'll crack open and start spilling out and bam, oh, you're right, that's what happened. Oh, and that's what I've always done. It's hard to blah, blah, blah. I don't know. But work is still being done. And so I charge for that hour because I'm still working just because they're not there. I'm still working. Also, because a lot happens around a fee. I don't like being charged for something. I have done it. I've missed an appointment. Sometimes completely because I set an appointment with somebody. I was like, hey man, let me help you out. I'll meet you at on Thursday, blah blah blah. And then I forget, and I had already paid for that meeting. I'm out that money. It makes me angry. I'm kicking something, but it's usually because of my own behavior. I'm going, how did I let this happen? Not Gurr, that jerk. Maybe sometimes it's Gurr, that jerk, but that's still work, right? Come to therapy next week. I can't believe you charged me for that missed session. I had an emergency brain surgery, right? Oh, that's a lot of anger there. Let's talk about it. And it becomes a part of the therapy. That is part of the work. Like if I do my job right, I will trigger you. So I think Dr. Shedler was very firm. It's important to never miss therapy sessions. I would really like it if you never missed a therapy session because that means I get to keep practicing and do really great psychotherapy. But if you don't, I'm still working. I'm still doing your therapy, even if you don't show up. And I'm going to maybe charge you for it. That's my approach. That's my perspective.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you for sharing that. That article was excellent. Really well
Oh,
written.
thank you, Jonathan Shedler, for putting it together. You have enriched my practice with your writing.
Yeah, and it gave us a great topic to talk about. I mean, very relevant, um, with and very much in line with what we like to talk about here in the show.
Mm-hmm.
Which reminds me, I want to remind everybody that we are broadcasting live from X and from YouTube, and we do like to hear from you guys. I do have here a question that came in from a DM. Let's see. Yeah, in regards to advice, if advice isn't therapy, why do I hear stories of therapies giving really good advice that changed someone's life?
Yes. Oh, those are always the big profound moments in therapy. It's very rarely advice. In those big breakthrough moments, usually a therapist, what they have done is what I've said earlier, they're tracking derivatives, and what they do is they give a transference interpretation. Now, that transference interpretation can sometimes be shaped as an invitation. Like, I wonder if it's going through this, it connects to that. If perhaps this is the pattern, perhaps there's another way. perhaps there's a way to deal with this differently. I wonder if there's a new solution. They're not telling you what that solution is in most cases. Now, sometimes that happens. Sometimes it's, hey, you need to run. Just run. Get out of that relationship. It's bad. I am very cautious of that. If someone says, my therapist told me to break up with my wife and I agreed with them and it was the best decision I ever made, maybe that wasn't therapy, though. That might have been a good decision. You might like the way your life is unfolding, but the mechanism of your mind, your psyche, your relational patterns, they may not have changed. I don't think I'm quite answering this question here, but if I'm hearing it correctly, I don't think that in those cases, even though it's framed as my therapist gave me the best advice the other day, what they're really sharing is the response to a transference interpretation. What they're saying is my therapist really shook me with something and it helped me see things a little bit more clearly. And now I know that I want to be doing this.
Well, yeah, most people don't have the vocabulary to accurately convey what's happening, right? They're like, hey, this seemed like an advice to me. That's what it is,
right?
I don't know how many people are gonna use our psychology.
Well, I'm right there with them because I'm not very good with words, which is why I'm in such a delicate conundrum.
You're saying a lot of big words, so I'm gonna that I don't understand. So I'm gonna take that as disrespect.
I'm gonna take that as
That's from something. That's from.
No, that was Kevin Hart.
Oh yeah,
a lot of words. I don't know what they mean. I'm gonna take them as disrespect. What was that? 40-year-old virgin, maybe? Oh,
I think so. I think that's what it is. Yeah,
I'm gonna have to find that. Well, I do think that this is probably a good time for us to wrap up. I wanna thank Dark Brian. I see his comment now. I also see a comment from YouTube. 9 Brains looks so much younger than on the Twitter profile picture. Thank you. I have good.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah, I think that's all I have to report. Why don't you bring us home, Pablo?
Yeah, sounds good. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. Thank you for those who have participated. We do read all your comments, even though if you put them on the live or if you put them on DMs, doesn't matter. We like to receive them and read them and have a good conversation here. I want to thank the Hopewell Institute for bringing us this show and for making the Living Well show possible. Thank you, Dr. Paring, for just the phenomenal conversations and topics. Just a friendly reminder, we have that lovely QR code there in the top left of your screen. Any kind of support towards the Hopewell Institute will in turn result into more resources and more topics here for you guys at the Living Well show.
Yes, please help fund our coffee habit and maybe buy us more colorful splashlights.
Until Polar hits us with a sponsorship, we'll keep that QR code up there. Well, awesome.
Well, Pablo, I appreciate you. To our audience, thank you for coming here to talk about psychology and psychotherapy.